the next senator from the great state of Texas. Just to get this part out of the way, I'm Julian. And this is Joaquin. And now you know who the better looking twin is, right? We're excited to be here. I know that in Beto you're going to have somebody who will fight to make sure that people can afford to go see their doctor in Texas.
That's right.
This is at a time where the cost of insulin for diabetics over several years has gone up as much as 3 times. We live in a state that has the highest percentage of people that still have no health care coverage. And y'all know in our communities, you look out there and you see many of our senior citizens who are suffering quietly, who are no longer able to work, and they have their kids and their grandkids taking care of them. And so Beto is going to make sure we can afford health care. He's going to make sure that he goes to Washington and tells the truth about the Rio Grande Valley. Rather than the senator who's there now, who makes his political career about telling lies about the people of the Rio Grande Valley what this community is.
Tell it!
You know, Joaquin and I are here because we grew up with our mother and our grandmother had come when she was about 7 years old from Mexico because her parents had died right around the time of the Mexican Revolution. They ended up in San Antonio, and she worked as a maid, a cook, and a babysitter because they pulled her out of elementary school and she never finished her education. But she raised our mother as a single parent, and my mom finished high school and then she went to college. She raised us as a single parent, and we went to college and then went to law school. We became the first in our family to become professionals and then to go into public service and get to serve the community that we grew up in. We went into public service because we felt very blessed by opportunity in this great nation. And we understood that opportunity isn't just an accident. It happens when people work hard, and all of our families in our community works hard.
That's
but
right.
It also only happens when you have leaders that make sure you invest in opportunity.
That's right.
Leaders who make sure you invest in education, in healthcare, in infrastructure, in all of those things that add up to thriving in the 21st century.
That's
and
right.
There's no community that knows that better. And also, no community that is ready to meet that opportunity better than the Rio Grande Valley. So we're here to support a man who is from El Paso, who understands border communities and their tremendous potential and beauty. Now, how many of y'all watched that debate the other night? Did y'all watch Beto win that debate the other night? What you saw the other night was someone who is a consummate Washington insider. Somebody, when they asked him to say one nice thing about Beto, he couldn't even get that right. And on the other side, Beto, who is a man of the people of Texas, who is not focused on Washington, but focused on you and your family. And that's why we need to make a change in November and elect Beto O'Rourke to the United States Senate. He's going to spend his time working for you. Ted Cruz spent his time campaigning for president.
That's right. Woo!
And so without further ado, please help us welcome our good friend, the next senator for Texas, Beto O'Rourke.
Hey, Edinburg, how are you? Good to see you. Good to be with you. Good to be with every single one of you. So grateful that you're here. Senator Hinojosa, thank you for organizing us, pulling us together, and getting us started.
Yeah!
To the Bidi Bidi Banda Band, thank you for rocking the house today. To my heroes, the Castro brothers, thank you for your leadership and strong support for what we're doing right now. And to each one of you, thank you for making me feel more hopeful or more encouraged, more excited about the future of this country than I have ever been. When I look out at this room right now, and I look out at people, not political action committees, I see people instead of corporations. I see people instead of special interests. I see the future of this country right here in Edinburg, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley, and it is a beautiful future, one that I am proud of, and grateful to have the chance to represent in the United States Senate the way that you have helped us to run this race. We're not running against anyone, not running against another political party. So if you are a Republican, you're in the right room. If you are a Democrat, you're in the right room. Independents, you're welcome as well. The dude who is wearing the Make America Great Again cap, you can come in too. Wherever you are right now, come in and join us. Everyone is welcomed at this deeply divided, highly polarized moment in this country's history. She is calling on all of us not to define ourselves by what we're against or what we're afraid of or who we want to keep out, but those big, ambitious, aspirational things that we can only do together. And at this critical moment where our kids, the very youngest among us, are counting on us, their future is at stake, we cannot let them down and cannot fail to have the courage of our convictions, those things that we know and that we really believe in. You in the Valley, we in El Paso, Texas, we understand the United States-Mexico border better than anyone else. So let's not allow anyone from anywhere to try to talk us in to being scared of ourselves or who we are or where we are right now. This is a driver for the entire United States economy, whether it's the trade, the retail shopping that takes place here, our connection to the rest of the world, our front door, not just to Mexico, but the planet beyond. It meets right here in Edinburg, in the Valley, on the United States-Mexico border. Nothing to wall off, nothing to militarize. Everything to celebrate an example that we should be able to follow. What if we use the stories of those here in this community of people who've been here through their families for 9 or 10 generations. Some folks who've been here for 9 or 10 days. All of us at this moment, every bit as American as the next person right next to you, right? Everyone just as important, just as deserving of being heard or listened to, represented, served, or fought for. What if we decided that those dreamers here in this community, who know no other country but the United States of America, who speak no other language in most cases other than English, who are in every way that's meaningful, every bit as American as my 3 kids that we're raising in El Paso, Texas, what if we decided that we, the people of the border, the people of Texas, one of the most diverse states in the Union, who understands that immigration is not a problem, it is our competitive advantage, and that those who choose this country to be here, to plant their flag, to serve us, whether the 20,000 dreamers who are teaching in our classrooms right now, the countless dreamers serving overseas in Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria right now, putting their lives on the line, that we decide we are going to free them from any fear of deportation by making them U.S. citizens right now so that they can contribute to their full potential. What do you think about that? This community, which bore firsthand witness to the fact that this country, in the year 2018, and no one would believe it if we hadn't seen it happen with our own eyes, would take children from their parents after they had survived one of the most treacherous ordeals imaginable.
Shame, shame, shame.
Leaving the deadliest countries in this hemisphere, if not the world. How bad would things have to be for you to scoop up your little girl, your little boy, travel 2,000 miles on foot, if you're lucky, atop a train known as the Beast or La Bestia, coming here to the front door of the United States, seeking asylum, shelter, refuge, as have countless generations of Americans before us, only to find not the safety that you sought for that little girl, but your worst nightmare. Literally torn from your breast, you turned over to the custody of the Department of Justice, prosecuted like a common criminal, deported back to the very country from which you fled, and that little girl, for whom you risked your very life right now. Maybe she's in a foster care home in Michigan or Ohio or Indiana. Maybe she's in a tent camp in the Chihuahuan Desert in Tornillo, Texas. And neither you nor she know when or even if you will see each other again. And even if you do, we know that this inhumanity, this cruelty, this torture that we have visited upon her will have lifelong effects on her ability to reconnect with you. We were in El Paso at Loretto Chapel, where Annunciation House, Ruben Garcia, and other volunteers in our community facilitated some of those reunions for families lucky enough to be able to see each other again. And after months, that 7-year-old girl who now sees her mother for the first time, there's no smile on her face, no tears of joy rolling down her cheek. There's a vacant expression, an inability to connect again with the most important person in her life. We know this is cruel. We know this is inhumane. It is up to us, more importantly, up to the people of Edinburg who understand this and witnesses to decide.
That's right. That's right.
We get to decide on the 6th of November what our future will be and whether or not another child from another parent will also decide that right now, as hundreds of kids are in this very situation, whether we will insist that every single one of them is reunited with their parents, that those parents who have been deported, if they need asylum because their own government cannot protect them, that they be able to be here, that they contribute not just to the success of their families and those children whose lives they tried to save, but they contribute to the very greatness of this country by their presence. El Paso, Texas, the city that I was born and raised in, the city where I sometimes get to help my wife Amy raise Ulysses and Molly and Henry. One of the safest cities in the United States of America. And yes, it is safe because we have excellent women and men who serve us in uniform in the Border Patrol.
Yes.
We have amazing men and women who serve us in the local police department and the sheriff's department, and we are grateful for their service. But we are also safe, not in spite of, but because of the fact that we are a city of immigrants. And people chose this country. They chose to be here. They chose to be successful. And they chose to make us successful as a result. So let's have the courage of our convictions. And let's not be afraid to say that we want to lead on these issues. Let's not be afraid of that other candidate who might say, because I don't think we need walls, because I acknowledge that we already have 20,000 Border Patrol agents. We're already spending $19.5 billion a year to secure the border. We had 1.6 million apprehensions in the year 2000. We had a little over 300,000 last year. And those we are apprehending, by and large, are turning themselves in. They're trying to seek asylum. They're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to do what any human being in that very same situation would do for themselves. No wall is going to keep out that kind of misery. No wall will prevent this country from meeting its obligations under its own laws and the best traditions of humanity. This country, which 242 years ago said that all of us were created equal, and that none of us can have our life or our liberty or our ability to pursue our happiness taken from us. Will we still live to that hope, to that promise, to that dream, to that
Yes,
example?
we will!
I say yes, and I say that we are going to lead the way. As Joaquin said, we are losing people in this very community from diabetes. From diabetes in the year 2018, in the wealthiest, the most powerful place on the planet, whose very citizens, all of us, through our taxes paid for the research and innovation that led to the cures and the medications that are sold back to us at exorbitant rates, the most expensive in the developed world. People trying to crowdfund their insulin treatment as prices for insulin have gone through the roof. For us to have the audacity to ask that we expand Medicaid in this state, a state that left $100 billion on the table that the federal government was going to pay for. To have the audacity of asking that we expand Medicare to make sure that more people can buy into their own health care and the health care of their children, that we drive down the cost of premiums, that we protect everyone with a pre-existing condition. When we are attacked for wanting to invest in ourselves, in our kids, in our parents, and in our families, let's turn it around and say, how can you have the gall to ask me about making sure that someone is healthy enough to finish their education, or to work that job, or to raise their family, or to start a small business, when you just voted for $2 trillion in tax cuts to go to corporations and special interests and the very wealthiest in this country? The people of the future, our kids and grandkids, they won't be able to believe this story. At a time that you were $21 trillion in debt as a country. You're fighting wars all over the world, 27 years straight in Iraq, adding trillions more to that debt at a time of historic income inequality unseen by anyone in this room, unless you were alive at the end of the 19th century, at the last Gilded Age. That somehow our answer to that was to add 2 more trillions and send the savings to corporations who are already sitting on record piles of cash. The people of the future, if we allow this to stand, if we allow the walls to be built, if we allow those kids to go unreunited with their parents, they will be asking themselves, who were those pendejos of 2018? Somos parte de una campaña que está en cada condado, 254 en este estado, porque queremos escuchar y mejor entender cada persona. Y no me importa si son republicanos, demócratas o independientes. Yo quiero servir cada persona en el Senado. Y allí quiero compartir la historia de esta parte de nuestro estado, de la Valle. Que no necesitamos tener miedo de la gente que vive aquí, que tenemos orgullo, ser fronterizos, ser parte del futuro de este país. Y si queremos asegurar nuestras comunidades, necesitamos tratar cada persona con respeto y dignidad. No necesitamos muros, no necesitamos militarizar, necesitamos invertir in gente, in comunidades, no in las corporaciones or the political action.
That's right.
This has to be about people all the time, everywhere, every single day. You know why we go to places like Abilene, Texas? So red, you can see it glowing from outer space. Because it is so reliably Republican that Democrats fear to tread, and they've no longer gone there to compete for votes, to share their ideas, their vision of the future of this country and how Abilene can help lead the way. And when Democrats don't go, Republicans no longer have to show up because they have no natural enemy in that place. And so no one is represented or able to hold someone accountable, or having a meeting like this where their voice becomes part of the story and the campaign and the service that is provided in these offices of public trust. And so we've been showing up to places like Abilene. First time we went, maybe 25 people came out. Next time we went, maybe 100 people came out. Fourth town hall that we held in Abilene, Texas at the Paramount Theater, 750 people came out. In much the same way, someone just asked me, what are you doing back in the valley? It's not easy to get here.
We love you,
Beto. Drive a lot of miles. A lot more people live in Houston or Dallas or some other part of the state. Why keep coming back to the valley? Why are you in Edinburg yet again? And I'll tell you, there's something that happens just like Abilene, only on the other side of the political spectrum.
Because you love
so reliably Democratic that people have been taken
for granted.
Yeah.
Republicans fear to tread. Democrats statewide don't have to show up. And let's be honest with each other. And I know this. I don't know if you can see it. And with the right lighting, you can see an El Paso-sized chip on my shoulder. No one ever came to El Paso.
Show up.
We're one of the last, or we were one of the last Democratic strongholds in Texas. The only major city in the Mountain Time Zone. It takes 2 flights to get to El Paso. No one ever came to our community and said, hey, Beto, you live on the border. Tell me what it's like. You guys understand international trade, relations with Mexico, immigration, the war on drugs. I want to know your perspective on these issues. They took us for granted. Well, listen, in this campaign, where we have not accepted a single dime of political action committee, corporations, we are showing up for people everywhere, and no one will feel like they are taken for granted, because we will not take anyone for granted. We're back here in the Valley, and you will see us again, and I promise you, you will get sick of us coming back to the Valley. We will come back so often. And as your senator, I will be back here to hold town hall meetings where you hold me accountable for those things that you expect from me to deliver for you. And I expect the tough questions. I expect the constructive criticism. All of those will make me a better representative in the Senate for you, just as it is done in El Paso. When I served that community in the United States Congress, every single month we come back and have an all-comers welcomed, no-holds-barred town hall meeting. And my team can tell you, I go into those meetings with a little bit of fear in my gut. I'm going to face my constituents, those who put me into this position of public trust, and I'm going to account for how I voted, the progress that we made on legislation, the public statements that I've made. And if you were inspired to come out to that meeting, it might not be because you love me. It might be because you have a serious question on your mind. You may be disappointed in a decision I've made. You may be my mom, and you love me no matter what, and my mom comes to a lot of those. But those conversations, those questions that I'm forced to ask, they've made me a much better representative than I would have been otherwise. Somebody stood up at one of these meetings and they said, listen, Beto, we've been able to work together to turn around mental health care wait times at the El Paso VA. We were ranked worst in the nation for a while, and working together, no one person did it, but the community decided we would make this a priority. We would focus on it. We went from 68 full-time providers for mental health care at the VA to 113 last month. We've gone from dead last in the country to exceeding the national average, doing better than the national average on wait times. But they said, listen, there are 500,000 veterans in this country who put their life on the line, who served at a time that 1% have served this country in uniform since 9/11. Just 1% fighting all these wars, carrying the weight of our foreign policy on their backs for all of us. And they come back, and those who are discharged with a bad paper discharge, and other than honorable discharge, may have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, military sexual trauma, traumatic brain injury, the signature wounds and conditions of service and combat, pushed out of that service, and by law, unable to set foot in a VA and see that provider whose treatment might very well save their lives. Ladies and gentlemen, 20 veterans a day, by the last official estimate of the VA, take their lives every single day. There's another estimate that says it's 22. And most of those veterans were not able, or for whatever reason, were unwilling to go into the VA to get care. Among those veterans who have a bad paper discharge, the suicide rate is twice as high. And so someone at a town hall just like this raised their hand and said, Beto, what are you going to do about it? So we wrote this bill, the Honor Our Commitment Act, that would provide health care and the ability to go into a VA for a veteran who has a bad paper discharge. But that bill, as well-intentioned as it was worth the paper that it was written on and nothing more if we couldn't get it passed. And if I came back to my community and they asked me progress on that bill, and I said, listen, we wrote it, and it's beautiful, but those Republicans, they won't work with us. They're in the majority. We have to wait till the next election. They call bullshit on me, as they should, right? And so fearing that, anticipating that, I found the Republican with whom we could work. He did not like my original draft of the bill, insisted on some changes if we were going to be able to reach the consensus position to introduce it to the Congress. We made those changes. We didn't allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good. We got that passed 435-0 in the House of Representatives. Got it passed in the United States Senate. And just to prove that will work anytime, anywhere, with anyone, we got it signed by Donald J. Trump 1 year to the day that we first introduced it, expanding mental health care access for veterans and saving lives in the process. What if we met every challenge before us in that same way, not allowing partisanship to divide us or determine our fate or the outcomes before us? What if we said, listen, we know that half of the teachers here in this room are working a second or a third job just to make ends meet? That's wrong. We know that all of the teachers in this room in our public schools are asked to teach to high stakes, high pressure, standardized tests that in no way measure their value to those children.
Shame, shame, shame! Shame!
What if we said retired teachers have not seen a cost of living adjustment since 2005?
That's right.
13 years. 13 years as the cost of medication and gasoline and household expenses have gone up. In real terms, their income has gone down and down and down. And last year, to add insult to injury, their health care costs doubled in the state of Texas, literally pricing these retired teachers out of their homes. Now listen, it is not a Democratic Party value to stand up for public education. I know that because I've been to Henrietta, Texas, where I sat down with a Republican family. And that Republican public school teacher told me, she said, Beto, if I find out that you let Betsy DeVos take the tax dollars that I pay to support those kids in my public school classroom and she turns them into a voucher and sends them to a private school, mark my words, Beto O'Rourke, I will hunt you down. I will find you and I will hold you accountable. This is a universal value that we stand up and organize for our public school educators, pay them a living wage, allow them to teach to the children, ensure that they can lead a retirement of dignity and not one of poverty, and that we attract the next generation of teachers here. I see some of my friends from Moms Demand Action at the back of the room. Here's another one that Texas can lead on. And this is not for Democrats and it's not for Republicans. It's not for gun owners and it's not for non-gun owners. It is for all of us. This country can either accept that we will continue to lose 30,000 of our fellow Americans to gun violence every year, and just accept as a consequence that there's something inherently wrong with us, and that's just the way it goes in America. No other developed country sees anything close to this. We can accept that my 7-year-old, one of the last days of first grade, his teacher taught he and his classmates how to huddle into a closet, resist the temptation to open the door when somebody impersonating an active shooter was banging on it, demanding that they open up. We can know that teachers who already sacrificed so much may be asked to make the ultimate sacrifice and stand in between one of those children and somebody who walks in with a gun, somebody who is better armed in that classroom against kids than our soldiers were in Vietnam against the enemy. We can decide that we're going to accept that, or this state, with its proud tradition of responsible and safe gun ownership, can insist on universal background checks for everyone who wants to purchase a firearm. We can make sure that those weapons, which were designed for the sole purpose of killing human beings as effectively, as efficiently, and as great a number as possible, stay on the battlefield and don't find their way into our schools, our churches, our public spaces, our concerts, our lives, and take the lives of those in our lives. We can lead the way on that as well. I know it.
Tell it.
For a state that contributes to one of the largest prison populations on the face of the planet. In fact, per capita, the largest prison population on the face of the planet.
Tell the truth.
A prison population that does not look like the population of this country is disproportionately comprised of people of color. 1/3 there serving time for nonviolent drug crimes. And though we know that Americans of all races use and deal illegal drugs at the same rate, only some Americans of some races will be arrested and will be doing time. Only some will leave prison with a conviction that forces them to check a box when they want to apply for a job, making it that less likely that they'll get that job. Keeps them from being able to qualify for a Pell Grant so that they can go to a higher education that will allow them to better themselves and do better for all of us. Only some will have their options and their choices constrained and narrowed. We can either accept that and the cost to you and I, $22,000 a year to keep someone locked up. We can accept the fact that for many people, they have been written out of economic life, of democratic life, of the social justice and civil rights that they deserve as human beings and our fellow Americans. Or we can decide that this state will lead the way on criminal justice reform. We'll ensure that there's true equity in public school education, where some children, based on their race, are disciplined 4 to 5 times as much as other children of other races. We'll make sure that there are the resources there, but we will also end a war on drugs that has become a war on people, on some people over others. We'll end the prohibition on marijuana, and we'll make sure that those whose only crime is being arrested for possession of a substance that is legal in most of the states in the union today, that arrest expunged from their records so that they can move forward, getting a job, going to school, raising their families, starting a business, making this an even better country for their ability to contribute. Are you all with me on this? I think you can lean on this as well. We got to stay focused, right? If we want to do these or any other thing that's important to us, stop this planet from warming another 2 degrees Celsius, after which it's off the tracks and we do not get it back. If we want to make sure that a state that is the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis 3 times as deadly for African American women, the same state that closed down so many of its family planning clinics, that it made it so hard for a woman to get a cervical cancer screening, to see a family planning provider, to see a doctor of any kind, that we're losing them faster here than in almost any other country on the planet today. We can decide that every woman should be able to make her own decisions about her own body, and have access to the health care that allows her to do that. Universal health care means universal health care for everyone. But we've got to stick together, right? If this is going to be the test of our lifetime, our moment of truth, our message to the people of the future, we've got to stay together, because there are no PACs, there are no special interests, there are no corporations who will be on our side in this race. It is only people, the people of Texas. And listen, for each one of you who has made a phone call on behalf of this campaign, or has knocked on a door, or has volunteered for us, making that human-to-human connection. At this divided moment, in this very digital age, where we're tempted to just have that screen in front of our faces and not have to have an unguarded or uncomfortable conversation with someone that we do not know. If you're willing to transcend that and knock on that door, listen, the person behind that door, they may or may not see our TV ad. They may or may not hear the radio spot playing on their drive home from work. They may or may not receive the mail or even open it up when we mail it to them. They will never forget that you took some time out of your life and welcomed them in to the election of their lifetimes. Told them why it matters so much for you, and then listened to them about what matters most to them. This is the moment that we get this country back. And I don't mean for Democrats, okay? I mean for people. This is our choice, our decision, our moment, and our year. So on behalf of this entire campaign and everyone who is working on it, I want to thank you for all the work that you've done so far.
You're welcome.
I want to thank you for all the work that you are about to do. And I especially want to thank you for the historic victory that we're going to celebrate on the 6th of November. For this state, for this country, and for every generation that follows. Thank you so much, Edinburg. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Beto,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
you need a fan.